Well, Nigeria moves to curb the deployment of substandard equipment in the renewable segment of the power sector within the Rural Electrification Agency, REA, receiving devices from Huawei to test the authenticity of the products, both local and imported. At a brief handover ceremony in Abuja, the chief executive of the REA, Aliyu, reiterated President Bola Tinubu's determination to ensure the quality of products consumed in Nigeria. Well, the equipment received will help reduce cases of low-quality materials in Nigeria's renewable energy drive. According to Aliyu, the MOU was signed to enable Huawei to support the agency in developing a world-class mimicry standardization and simulation center in Abuja as Nigeria works towards positioning itself as a renewable hub of Africa. All right, we have the helmsman of the agency, Aliyu, here with us to look at this particular story. Glad to have you join us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Now you're on a mission to wipe out substandard renewable products and boost local manufacturing confidence. How? It came to our notice that the country, as we know, imports a lot of renewable equipment, be it the photovoltaic panels, inverters and batteries. But it came to our notice that a number of these products are used products that are imported and deployed as new ones into the country. And in our quest also to incentivize the private sector to invest in the manufacturing assembly, we believe that if we do not curb this importation of used or substandard product, it would derail that effort of the current administration to get the private sector putting their money in the manufacturing and assembly. That is why last year in September specifically, when Mr. President visited China, the Rural Electrification Agency, under the leadership of the Honorable Minister of Power, signed an MOU with Huawei, a tier 1 manufacturers of batteries and inverters, to support the Rural Electrification Agency build world-class standardization and simulation center by providing Rural Electrification Agency with the equipment that we can now test this equipment, determine their suitability, determine their lifespan and aging, as well as also determine whether they adhere with our technical standards. So we signed that MOU in September, and just this week we are happy to announce that they will fulfill all the commitment in that MOU. Huawei on their own provided us with all this equipment, and we showed it to the Nigerian public to demonstrate that all MOUs signed are not just technical signing, are reality. We received all this equipment, 18 of them. One of the equipment, first of it is kind in the country, and we are now going to deploy this in our center, and we'll start making effective use of it. How many centers? Is it just?
So at the moment, we're going to have only one center in the head office, but we are looking at deploying it in all our zonal offices. We have zonal offices in all the 6 geopolitical zones in the country. So this is our aim, but at the moment, it's only in the head office.
One center for yes. The time being. You talked about the private sector. What's your go-to plan to involve the private sector?
So if you look at all the programs that Rural Electrification Agency is currently implementing, it's all around the private sector. And this is in our own drive, one, to ensure sustainability of our project, and at the same time also to bring in private sector investment into the sector. We know from the beginning that government on its own cannot address the challenge without the funding from the private sector. To address just the electricity access in the country requires close to $25 billion US. And at the moment, the Rural Electrification Agency, what we have as a public funding, it's close to like $2 billion US.
But this money, we intend to now use it rather than just deploying the infrastructure through the contracts. We are deviating from that, but we use that money to now catalyze the private sector to bring in their money. So I give you an example. Under the distributed access through renewable energy scale-up project, we have $750 million as a public funding. But that public funding is to now be used to catalyze a private sector funding of $1.1 billion US. So rather than just using 750, we are now going to get about almost 2 billion to deploy this infrastructure.
So it's like magnets to iron.
Exactly.
You're using what you have to bring them in so they can be a part of.
Absolutely.
All right. Talk about this China-Africa initiative. Just give us an overview of what this is China-Africa, and then how it relates to, of course, Nigeria.
Well, I can only speak about the area, the scope of Rural Electrification Agency. We were invited to be part of Mr. President's entourage because of the role that China plays in the renewable energy. If you look at, for example, just PV panels, 95% of the world production of PV panels are in China. And at the same time, batteries and inverters, most of the tier 1 are being manufactured in China. So we now specifically feel that we have to give China that kind of direction to look into China and see how not only to continue to try to import this equipment from China, but how do we achieve knowledge transfer? How do we domesticate and localize this technology in the country? And I'm happy to say that based on the effort of the current government, for example, currently the country has a manufacturing capacity of PV panels of about 600 megawatt in the country, which has been unprecedented. And all this investment started under the leadership of the president. And there are many more coming up. For example, last 2 weeks, our REA was in Ogun State, Shagamu, Ogun Axis, where another company, Trenos, broke the ground for the establishment of 800 megawatt PV panel manufacturing plant. And REA also signed a joint development agreement with Infracorp for a 1 gigawatt PV panels manufacturing, and the same thing also we signed with Oando for 1.2 gigawatt PV panel assembly plant.
2 questions immediately. What's the reach so far for rural areas in Nigeria? And this alternative power, how far can it go to solving the problem or challenge of rural electricity?
The alternative power is the only solution we have to address the electricity access in the country. It is the most economically and the most efficient means of addressing the access challenge in the country. And I give you an example. Why this is so, because if you look at the cost of extending the transmission line from where it is to this rural area, it is highly high cost.
Okay.
1 kilometer, for example, of transmission towers, based on rule of thumb, it's about $1 million US. So there is high cost of extending the grid. Then secondly, these rural areas that do not have the access, their offtake of the electricity is very low. So why should you spend a lot of money to extend the grid to these rural areas, and their consumption of electricity is very low? So the most economically viable way of addressing the challenge is taking the power plant, using the renewable sources, building distribution lines and metering within the communities. And that is exactly what we are doing. Building the mini grid, taking the electricity to this without extending the grid.
Before I let you go, talk about sustaining the mini grid infrastructure and how it will improve Nigeria's power structure.
So the sustainability of our oil intervention is through the private sector. And that is the wisdom of building our infrastructure deployment around the private sector. Because if the private sector brings in their money and we deploy this infrastructure, they will make sure that it is working for them to recoup their investment and get some predetermined IRR. But for the mini grids that are EPC based, we establish what we call the Renewable Energy Asset Management Company. The Honorable Minister granted us that approval. So these assets, all those assets that we build through APC will be on the balance sheet of this company, and will leverage also on that balance sheet to raise more capital for us to continue to deploy the infrastructure across the country.
One more, how do you intend to position Nigeria as a renewable hub of Africa? Do we have that capacity?
Oh, absolutely. We have the market, 86 million without access. That is, it's not a challenge, it's a market. We have the manufacturing now that we are domesticating. Like I told you, we have 600 megawatt capacity and more are coming. Before the end of this administration, this country will have close to 4 gigawatts PV panels, assembly or manufacturing capacity. More batteries are being established. We are building technical capacity. We have talent within the country that are doing this work. We have also catalyzed an ecosystem of RESCO, renewable energy service companies, that have secured experience in deploying this asset, in catalyzing private financing in both debt and equity, and also in deploying this infrastructure not only in Nigeria but across the country. Absolutely, Nigeria will be a renewable hub in very short period of time.
Nigerians who are listening to you hope that in very short period of time, our rural areas will have light and Nigerians can have access, adequate access to electricity. Wishing you the best. Aliyu, CEO, Rural Electrification Agency. Thank you for being on Newsnight.